My mother was dying, and I was holding her hand when she said the words that shattered everything I thought I knew about my life. I need to tell you something. You're not his daughter. Your father, he never knew, but I knew. Every time I looked at you, I remembered what I'd done. My name is Jennifer Harris, but everyone calls me Jenny. I'm 58 years old, and for all of those years, I've been trying to understand why my mother didn't love me, not the way she loved my brother Daniel and my sister Rebecca, not with the warmth and pride and easy affection she gave them so freely. I thought maybe I was imagining it, maybe I was being paranoid or oversensitive, but deep down I always knew. A child knows when they're not wanted. They can feel it in every stiff hug, every disappointed sigh, every time their mother looks at them like they're a stranger who wandered into the wrong house. My mother's name was Margaret Ann Harris. She died 3 weeks ago at the age of 82, in a hospital room in Portland, Maine, with me sitting beside her bed. My siblings weren't there. They'd gone to get coffee, to stretch their legs, to escape the oppressive atmosphere of death that had settled over the room like a heavy blanket. I should have gone with them. Maybe if I had, I wouldn't know the truth. Maybe I could have continued believing that my mother's coldness toward me was just her personality, just the way she was. Maybe I could have mourned her with the same uncomplicated grief my siblings are feeling. But I didn't go. I stayed, and she told me, "Let me back up. Let me tell you about my childhood, about growing up as the middle child in what everyone thought was a perfect family." We lived in a beautiful colonial house in Falmouth, a suburb of Portland. My father, Robert Harris, was a successful attorney. My mother was a stay-at-home mom who volunteered at our schools and organized neighborhood events. My older brother, Daniel, was the golden child, athletic and popular. My younger sister, Rebecca, was the baby, sweet and charming, everyone's favorite. And then there was me, Jenny, quiet, bookish Jenny, the one who never quite fit. Daniel is 3 years older than me. Rebecca is 4 years younger. I remember being excited when I found out I was going to be a big sister. I was 4 years old, and my mother was pregnant with Rebecca. I remember putting my hand on her belly, feeling the baby kick, being told I'd have a little sister to play with soon. When Rebecca was born, my mother lit up in a way I'd never seen before. She'd smile at Rebecca with such pure, uncomplicated joy. She'd hold her for hours, singing to her, stroking her hair. She'd take 1,000 photographs, documenting every moment. I'd watch from the doorway, feeling something I didn't have words for yet: jealousy, longing, confusion about why she never looked at me that way. With Daniel, she was proud. She went to all his soccer games and cheered the loudest. She displayed his trophies prominently in the living room. She bragged about him to her friends. With me, she was dutiful. She made sure I had clean clothes and nutritious meals. She signed my permission slips and attended parent-teacher conferences. She did all the things a mother is supposed to do, but there was no warmth, no spark, no joy in doing any of it. I remember being 7 years old and winning first place in the school art competition. I was so excited. I ran home with my ribbon and my drawing, bursting through the door, yelling, "Mom, Mom, I won." She was in the kitchen, making dinner. She looked at my drawing, a crayon depiction of our house, with our family standing in front of it. "That's nice, Jenny," she said, her voice flat. Then she turned back to the stove. "Go wash your hands. Dinner's in 10 minutes. That was it. No hug. No "I'm so proud of you." No putting the drawing on the refrigerator. It ended up in a drawer somewhere, forgotten. When Rebecca won a similar competition a few years later, my mother framed her drawing and hung it in the hallway. I remember standing in front of it, staring at it, trying to understand what was different about Rebecca's drawing that made it worthy of being displayed. There was nothing different, except that Rebecca had drawn it. As I got older, I tried hard. I got straight A's, thinking that would make her proud. She'd glance at my report card and say, "Good, keep it up." When Daniel got B's and C's, she'd say, "That's okay, honey. You're working so hard with soccer. Your grades are fine." I joined clubs and volunteered and did everything I could think of to be good enough, to be worth loving. It never worked. When I was 16, I overheard her talking to my Aunt Linda on the phone. I was supposed to be at a friend's house, but I'd come home early because I forgot my homework. "I just don't connect with her," my mother was saying. "I don't know why. There's something about Jenny that just, I can't explain it. She's a good kid, she really is, but when I look at her, I feel nothing." Isn't that terrible? What kind of mother feels nothing when she looks at her own child? I stood frozen in the hallway, my hand on the doorknob, unable to move. Hearing your mother say she feels nothing when she looks at you, there aren't words for that kind of pain. I went to college as soon as I could. University of Vermont, far enough away that I didn't have to come home often. I studied psychology, maybe trying to understand what was wrong with me, what made me so fundamentally unlovable. My mother didn't cry when I left for college. She helped me pack my car, gave me a brief hug, and said, "Call us when you get there." When Rebecca left for college 2 years later, my mother sobbed for an hour and called Rebecca every single day for the first month. I met my husband, Tom, in graduate school. He was kind and patient and seemed to genuinely like me, which felt like a miracle. We got married when I was 20. My mother came to the wedding, smiled in all the photos, made a brief toast about how happy she was for us, but I could see it in her eyes, the distance, the walls. Tom noticed too. "Your mom is reserved," he said carefully on our honeymoon. "She's just like that," I said, which was what I always said, but she wasn't like that with Daniel or Rebecca. At Daniel's wedding, 3 years before mine, she'd cried happy tears and told everyone how proud she was of him. At Rebecca's wedding, 2 years after mine, she danced and laughed and looked genuinely joyful. At my wedding, she looked like she was fulfilling an obligation. Tom and I had 2 children, Emma and Luke. My mother was a doting grandmother to Daniel's kids and Rebecca's kids. She'd babysit them overnight, take them on special outings, spoil them with gifts and attention. With my kids, she was polite. She'd visit for an hour or two, sit stiffly on the couch, ask perfunctory questions about school and hobbies. She never volunteered to babysit. She rarely called just to talk to them. Emma noticed when she was about 8, "Why doesn't Grandma like us?" she asked one day after a particularly awkward visit. "She likes you, honey. She's just not very demonstrative. She hugs Cousin Tyler all the time. She took Cousin Sarah to Disney World. She doesn't even remember my birthday." I had no answer for her. How do you explain to your child that their grandmother is cold to them for reasons you don't understand yourself? Over the years, I tried to talk to my mother about it. I tried to ask why things were different between us. She'd always deflect. "I don't know what you're talking about, Jennifer. I treat all my children the same. You love Rebecca more than me. That's ridiculous. A mother doesn't have favorites." But she did, and we both knew it. My siblings didn't understand. When I tried to talk to Daniel about it, he'd say, "Mom's just from a different generation. She's not touchy-feely with anyone. She's touchy-feely with you," I'd point out. "Well, I'm the oldest. It's different." Rebecca was even less helpful. "You're so sensitive, Jenny. You always have been. Mom loves you. She just shows it differently." But she didn't show it at all. That was the problem. When I was 45, my father died suddenly of a heart attack. My mother was devastated. We all were. The funeral was huge. My father had been well loved in the community. At the reception after the funeral, I watched my mother accept condolences from hundreds of people. She cried openly, accepted hugs, let people comfort her. When I approached to give her a hug, she stiffened, patted my back perfunctorily, and turned to the next person. Rebecca got a long, tight hug. Daniel got tears and whispered words I couldn't hear. I got a pat on the back. I started seeing a therapist after that. Sarah Williams was in her 60s, calm and insightful. Tell me about your relationship with your mother, she said in our first session. I laughed bitterly. What relationship? Over the next few years, Dr. Williams helped me understand that my mother's inability to love me wasn't my fault, that I hadn't done anything wrong, that some people just can't bond with certain children for reasons that have nothing to do with the child themselves. You've spent your whole life trying to earn love that was never going to be given, Dr. Williams said. That's not a reflection of your worth. That's a reflection of her limitations. It helped, somewhat, but there was still a part of me, that little 7-year-old girl with the blue ribbon, that wanted to know why. What was wrong with me? What had I done to deserve a lifetime of coldness from the woman who gave birth to me? 3 months ago, my mother was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, stage 4, terminal. The doctors gave her maybe 6 months. Daniel called me with the news. I felt numb, not grief, exactly. Something more complicated. Relief that soon the question of our relationship would be moved. Sadness for the mother-daughter bond I'd never had. Guilt for not feeling more upset. We should take turns staying with her, Daniel said. She shouldn't be alone. So we set up a schedule. Daniel would stay Mondays and Tuesdays. Rebecca would take Wednesdays and Thursdays. I'd take Fridays and Saturdays. Sundays we'd all be there together. Those Friday and Saturday nights in my mother's house were strange. She was weak, in pain, heavily medicated. Sometimes she'd sleep for hours. Sometimes she'd wake up confused, thinking I was someone else. Once she woke up, looked at me, and smiled. A real smile. Linda, she said, mistaking me for my aunt. I'm so glad you're here. She'd never been glad I was there before. Mostly we sat in silence. I'd read while she slept. I'd help her to the bathroom. I'd bring her water and medication. I'd do all the things a dutiful daughter does. We didn't talk about anything meaningful. We didn't have deep conversations about life or love or regrets. We just coexisted until that last day. It was a Tuesday. I wasn't supposed to be there. Tuesday was Daniel's day, but he'd called me that morning, frantic. Mom's taken a turn. The doctor says it's time. You need to come. Tom drove me to Portland from our home in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. It's only about an hour drive, but it felt like forever. Emma and Luke, now adults with their own lives, said they'd come as soon as they could. When we arrived at the hospital, my mother had been moved to a hospice room. Daniel and Rebecca were there, looking shell-shocked. Daniel had been crying. Rebecca's eyes were red and swollen. How is she? I asked. Barely conscious, Daniel said. The doctor says it could be hours or days. They've made her comfortable. We sat vigil. Tom stayed for a while, then left to give us family time. Hours passed. My mother slept. Her breathing labored and irregular. Around 7 p.m., Daniel and Rebecca announced they were going to get coffee and something to eat. They'd been there since early morning and needed a break. Do you want anything? Rebecca asked me. I shook my head. I'm fine. I'll stay with her. They left, and for the first time in months, maybe years, it was just my mother and I sat in the chair beside her bed, watching her breathe. The machines beeped softly. The room smelled like antiseptic and something else. Something sweet and wrong. The smell of death. I don't know why I took her hand. Maybe because I thought she couldn't feel it. Wouldn't know. Maybe because some part of me, even then, was still that little girl, wanting her mother's love. Her hand was cool and thin, all bones and papery skin. I held it gently, carefully, like holding a bird. Her eyes opened, slowly, with effort. She looked at me and for once, really looked at me, saw me. Jenny, she whispered. I'm here, Mom. Do you need anything? Water? Should I call the nurse? No, her voice was barely audible. I had to lean in close to hear her. I need to tell you something. Okay. I need to tell you before I die. You deserve to know. My heart started pounding. After 58 years, was she finally going to tell me why? Why she'd never loved me the way she loved Daniel and Rebecca. What is it, Mom? She took a labored breath, squeezed my hand with what little strength she had left. You're not his daughter. The world tilted. What? Your father? Robert? He's not your biological father. I couldn't process the words. They didn't make sense. What are you talking about? I had an affair before you were born, just once. One time, I was pregnant when I married Robert. He never knew. He thought you were his. The machines kept beeping. The fluorescent lights kept humming. But everything felt muffled, distant, like I was underwater. Who? Who? I managed to ask. Who was my father? Doesn't matter. He's dead. Died years ago. Robert is your father in every way that mattered. But biologically, she trailed off, exhausted from the effort of speaking. I sat there, her hands still in mine, trying to process this information. I wasn't Robert Harris's daughter. For the man who'd raised me, who'd been distant but never cruel, who'd at least tried to connect with me. He wasn't my biological father, and he'd never known. Did you love him? I asked. My biological father? No. It was a mistake. I loved Robert, always. Then why? Why did you do it? We'd been married 2 years. I thought Robert was having an affair. He wasn't, but I thought he was. I was angry, hurt. So I made a mistake, and you got pregnant. Yes, I realized later that Robert hadn't been unfaithful, but by then, I was pregnant. I couldn't tell him. He would have left me, so I let him think you were his. I pulled my hand away from hers, stood up, started pacing the small room. Is that why? The words came out harsh, loud. Is that why you never loved me? Because every time you looked at me, you saw your mistake, your guilt. She closed her eyes. A single tear ran down her cheek. I tried to love you, but every time I looked at you, yes, I saw what I'd done, the lie I was living, the secret I had to keep, and I couldn't help it. I resented you for being alive, for being proof of my betrayal. The confession hung in the air between us. After 58 years of coldness, of distance, of never understanding why I wasn't enough, I finally had my answer. It wasn't about me. It had never been about me. I was just a reminder of her guilt. You let me think there was something wrong with me, I said, my voice shaking. My entire life, I thought I wasn't good enough, that there was something fundamentally broken in me that made me unlovable, and it was never about me at all. It was about you, your guilt, your secret. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry, Jenny. Sorry doesn't fix 58 years. I know, but I had to tell you. You deserved to know the truth. Did I? Because knowing this truth doesn't make anything better. It just means I wasted my life trying to win the love of a woman who could never give it to me because she was too busy protecting her own guilty conscience. I was crying now, angry tears streaming down my face. You ruined my childhood. You made me feel worthless. You treated your grandchildren like they didn't matter because they came from me, all because you couldn't handle your own guilt. I know, she said. I know. I'm sorry. Before I could respond, the door opened. Daniel and Rebecca came in, carrying coffee cups, stopping when they saw my face. Jenny, what's wrong? Rebecca asked. I looked at my mother. Our eyes met. She gave an almost imperceptible shake of her head. Don't tell them. Even now, even on her deathbed, she wanted to protect her secret. I walked out of the room without answering. My mother died 6 hours later. At 3:17 a.m., I was in the waiting room when it happened. Daniel came to get me, his face devastated. She's gone, he said, and collapsed into my arms, sobbing. I held my brother and felt nothing. The funeral was 3 days later. Hundreds of people came, telling stories about what a wonderful woman Margaret Harris had been, kind, generous, loving. I sat in the front row between my siblings and listened to lie after lie. Rebecca gave a beautiful eulogy about our mother's unconditional love. Daniel spoke about how she'd always been there for us, always supportive. I said nothing. At the reception afterward, at my childhood home, I walked through the rooms looking at all the family photos on the walls. Pictures of Daniel with various trophies. Pictures of Rebecca at dance recital. Pictures of my parents on their wedding day, my mother radiant in white, the wedding dress she'd worn while pregnant with another man's child. There were pictures of me too, but fewer, and in every single one, I could see it now. The way my mother stood just a little apart from me. The way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes when she looked at me. The physical manifestation of a secret she'd carried for 6 decades. Are you okay? Tom appeared beside me, put his arm around my waist. She told me something before she died, something I can't unknow. Do you want to talk about it? Not yet. Maybe not ever. He kissed the top of my head. Whatever you need. After the reception, after everyone had left, Daniel, Rebecca, and I met with my mother's attorney for the reading of the will. It was straightforward. The house and all her assets would be split equally, 3 ways, except for one thing. There's a letter, the attorney said, handing me an envelope. Your mother left specific instructions that this was to be given only to you, Jennifer, after her death. Daniel and Rebecca looked curious, but not upset. Probably assumed it was some sentimental mother-daughter thing. I opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a handwritten letter on my mother's stationery. Her handwriting, shaky but legible. Jennifer, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And you know the truth about your paternity. I debated telling you for years. Part of me thought it would be kinder to take the secret to my grave. But in the end, I decided you deserved to know why our relationship was the way it was. It wasn't your fault. It was never your fault. You were an innocent child, and you deserved better than what I gave you. You deserved a mother who could look past her own guilt and see you for the wonderful person you are. I'm sorry I couldn't be that mother. I'm sorry I let my shame poison our relationship. I'm sorry for every cold shoulder, every withheld hug, every time I made you feel like you weren't enough. You were always enough, more than enough. The problem was me, not you. Your biological father's name was Michael Preston. He died in 2015. He never knew about you. I never told him I was pregnant. He was married, and it was truly just one terrible mistake made in anger and hurt. I've enclosed his obituary and a photo of him. You look like him, Jenny. I see him in your eyes, in the shape of your face. Maybe that's another reason I struggle. Every time I looked at you, I saw him. I know this doesn't fix anything. I know you've spent 58 years wondering what was wrong with you, and now you know it was never you at all. I hope that brings you some peace. I loved you as much as I was capable of loving you. It just wasn't enough, and for that, I will be sorry for eternity. Mom, attached to the letter was an obituary clipping. Michael Preston died age 72, survived by his wife of 45 years, 3 children and 7 grandchildren, and a photo, a faded color photograph from what looked like the 1960s. A young man, maybe 25, with dark hair and hazel eyes. My eye was smiling at the camera, unaware that he'd fathered a child he'd never know about. I had 3 half-siblings, 7 half-nieces or nephews, an entire family I'd never known existed. Jenny? Rebecca's voice pulled me back to the present. What is it? What does the letter say? I looked at my sister, my half-sister, technically, though she didn't know that. Should I tell them? Should I reveal the secret our mother had kept for so long? It's private, I said, folding the letter and putting it in my purse. Just some things Mom wanted me to know. I saw the hurt flash across Rebecca's face. Daniel looked puzzled, but I couldn't tell them. Not yet. Maybe not ever, because telling them would shatter their image of our mother. It would taint their memories. It would raise questions about the inheritance, about whether I was entitled to the same share if I wasn't really Dad's daughter. And maybe selfishly, I wanted to keep this one thing to myself, this one piece of truth that belonged to me alone. Over the next few weeks, I couldn't stop thinking about the letter, about Michael Preston, about my half-siblings who had no idea I existed. I hired a private investigator. I needed to know more. What he found was both mundane and devastating. Michael Preston had been a teacher, high school English. He'd lived his whole life in Portland, just 20 miles from where I grew up. He'd been by all accounts a good man, good husband, good father, pillar of the community. He taught at Lincoln High School, the same high school where my mother had briefly worked as a secretary, just after college, just after she married my father. That's where they'd met. That's where the affair happened. One night, probably after school hours, probably in a moment of anger and hurt and in terrible decision-making, my mother and Michael Preston had betrayed their respective partners. And I was the result. The private investigator found Michael's children's names and address. Laura Preston, 56, living in Boston. David Preston, 54, living in Seattle. Karen Preston, 50, living right here in Portland. My half-siblings, older than me, Michael's legitimate children, and younger than me, Karen. I had their contact information. I could reach out, I could tell them the truth. But what would that accomplish, except destroying their memory of their father? I struggled with the decision for months. Tom was supportive but worried. "Are you sure you want to open this door?" he asked one night. "Some truths don't make things better. They just make them different." "I just want to know," I said. "I want to know if they're like me, if I look like them, if there's a part of me that makes sense now." Emma was more direct. "Grandma was horrible to you, your whole life, and now you know why. Why do you need more? Why can't that be enough?" "Because it's not just about her anymore," I said. "It's about understanding who I am, where I come from. I spent 58 years thinking I was one person, and now I'm someone else entirely." I decided to start small. I found Karen Preston on Facebook. Her profile was semi-public. I could see her photos, and there I was, in her face. The same hazel eyes, the same shape of the nose, the same smile. We looked like sisters, because we were sisters. I spent hours scrolling through her photos. She was a teacher, like her father, our father. She had 2 kids, both in their 20s. She seemed happy, well-adjusted, loved, everything I'd never been. 3 months after my mother's death, I sent Karen a message. "Hi Karen, my name is Jennifer Harris. This is going to sound very strange, but I believe your father, Michael Preston, was also my biological father. I recently found out through my mother's deathbed confession. I'd like to talk to you if you're open to it. I understand this must be shocking, and I'm not looking for anything from you or your family. I just want to know the truth." I hit send before I could change my mind. 2 days later, she responded, "Jennifer, this is a lot to process. I'm not sure what to say. My father was a good man, and I find it hard to believe he would have had an affair. But I'm willing to talk. Can we meet for coffee?" We met at a cafe in downtown Portland. I got there early, nervous, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold my coffee cup. When Karen walked in, it was like looking in a mirror. Same eyes, same hair color, same mannerisms. We stared at each other for a long moment. "Oh my God," she whispered. "You look just like him." We sat down, ordered coffee. Neither of us knew where to start. Finally, Karen said, "Tell me everything." So I did. I told her about my mother's confession, about the affair, about growing up unloved and never understanding why, about the letter and the photo. When I finished, Karen was quiet for a long time. "I don't know what to say," she admitted. "My father, I never would have thought him capable of an affair. He and my mother were married for 45 years. They seemed happy. I'm sure they were. My mother said, it was just once. A mistake. Does your family know? Your siblings? No. And I'm not sure I'm going to tell them. What about Laura and David? My siblings. Our siblings. I don't know. That's partly why I wanted to talk to you first. To see if you thought they should know. Karen took a sip of her coffee, thinking, I think they should. Dad's been gone for 9 years. It doesn't change anything about who he was, or how much he loved us. But you exist. You're our sister. They should know, over the next few months. I met Laura and David. Both were skeptical at first, but agreed to DNA tests. The results were conclusive. We were half siblings. The dynamic was strange. They'd grown up loved and secure, with a father who'd been present and affectionate. They had memories of family vacations and bedtime stories and being told every day how special they were. I had none of that. And yet, we were connected by blood. We shared a father, even though only they had known him. I wish you could have known him, Laura said one day, over lunch in Boston. He was a wonderful man. He would have loved you, but he wouldn't have, because he never would have known about me. My mother made sure of that. Meanwhile, back in Portland, my relationship with Daniel and Rebecca was deteriorating. They knew something was wrong. I was distant, distracted. I'd started skipping family dinners and making excuses not to see them. What's going on with you? Rebecca asked one Sunday afternoon, cornering me at what would be the last family dinner I'd attend. Ever since Mom died, you've been different. Mom told me something before she died. What did she tell you? I looked at my sister, my half-sister, who'd grown up loved and cherished, while I'd been treated like an obligation. And I made a decision. She told me that Dad wasn't my biological father. The words hung in the air. Rebecca's face went white. Daniel, who'd been in the kitchen, came rushing in. What did you just say? So I told them, all of it. The affair, Michael Preston, the half-siblings in Boston and Seattle and Portland, the DNA tests, the truth. When I finished, Rebecca was crying. Daniel looked like he'd been punched. That's not possible, Rebecca said. Mom wouldn't. She was devoted to Dad. She had an affair, once, and I was the result. So you're not. Daniel couldn't finish the sentence. I'm not Dad's biological daughter. No. The silence was deafening. Well, Daniel finally said, his voice hard. I guess that explains a lot. What's that supposed to mean? Why Mom was always different with you. Why you never quite fit in. Why... He stopped, but the implication was clear. Why you weren't really one of us. I was still part of this family, I said, my voice shaking. Dad raised me. He was my father in every way that mattered. But not really, Rebecca said quietly. You're not our full sister. So that's it? 58 years of being siblings. And now you're just going to discard me, because we don't share. That's not what we're saying. Daniel protested, but his eyes told a different story. It's exactly what you're saying. I left. I walked out of that house, my childhood home, and I knew I'd never be back. Tom was waiting in the car. He took one look at my face and knew. I told them. How bad was it? Pretty bad. He drove us home in silence. Over the next few weeks, the situation got worse. Daniel called our mother's attorney, questioning whether I was entitled to an equal share of the inheritance if I wasn't actually Dad's biological child. Rebecca sent me a long email about how betrayed she felt, how our entire childhood had been a lie, how she didn't know if she could trust me anymore, as if I'd been the one keeping the secret, as if any of this was my fault. They wanted me to forfeit my inheritance. They suggested I should be grateful for the years Dad spent raising a child that wasn't his. They made it clear that as far as they were concerned, I was no longer truly part of the family. The attorney shut down the inheritance challenge immediately. Your father's will left everything to his 3 children. There's no biological requirement specified. Jennifer is legally entitled to her share, but the damage was done. My siblings and I were no longer speaking. Meanwhile, my relationship with my half-siblings from the Preston side was growing stronger. Karen and I had coffee every week. Laura video called from Boston monthly. David sent thoughtful emails with photos of our father that I'd never seen before. They welcomed me, they embraced me, they treated me like family. The family that shared my blood accepted me more readily than the family that had raised me. 1 year after my mother's death, I legally changed my name. I was no longer Jennifer Harris. I became Jennifer Preston. It felt right, like I was finally owning the truth of who I was. Daniel and Rebecca were furious. They saw it as a betrayal of our father's memory. But our father had been betrayed long before I came along, and he never even knew it. 2 years after my mother's death, I'm sitting in my living room in Portsmouth, looking at two sets of family photos. On the left, photos of Daniel and Rebecca and me as children, Christmas mornings, family vacations, birthday parties, a family that looked perfect but was built on a lot. On the right, photos of the Preston family, Michael and his wife and their children, a family I was never part of, but that I'm now connected to by blood. And in the middle, photos of my own family, Tom, Emma, Luke, Emma's new baby, my first grandchild, the family I've built for myself. This is where I belong, not in the past, trying to reconcile the lies, not with siblings who can't see past genetics, not grieving for a mother's love I was never going to receive, but here, in the present, with people who choose to love me. My mother kept her secret for 58 years. In doing so, she destroyed our relationship and poisoned my childhood. She let me believe I was fundamentally unlovable, when the truth was that she couldn't get past her own guilt. And when she finally told me, when she finally gave me the truth I'd spent my life searching for, it didn't set me free. It just gave me a different prison to live in. Because now I know, now I understand, and understanding doesn't make the pain go away, it just gives it a different shape. I think about her sometimes, my mother. I wonder if she felt relief when she finally told me, if unburdening herself of that secret made her last hours on earth any easier, or if she took it to her grave, the knowledge that she'd failed me in the most fundamental way a mother can fail a child. I'll never know. What I do know is this: I spent 58 years trying to be good enough for a woman who could never love me, and now I'm spending the rest of my life learning to be enough for myself. Dr. Williams, my therapist, says I'm doing well, that processing this kind of trauma takes time, that it's okay to be angry, to grieve, to feel robbed of the childhood I should have had. You're not the sum of your mother's mistakes, she tells me. You're not the product of her guilt. You're a person in your own right, and you have value independent of anyone's ability to recognize it. I'm trying to believe her. Last week, I visited my father's grave for the first time since my mother's funeral. Robert Harris, the man who raised me, who wasn't my biological father, but who tried in his own limited way to be my dad. I stood in front of his headstone and tried to figure out what to say. I'm sorry you never knew, I finally whispered. I'm sorry she lied to you. You deserved better than that. We both did. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves on the trees around the cemetery. For just a moment, I felt something, peace, maybe, or just acceptance. He'd loved my mother. He'd trusted her, and she'd betrayed that trust from the very beginning of their marriage. But he'd never known, and maybe, in some ways, that was a mercy. I don't visit my mother's grave. I can't. Not yet, maybe not ever. Karen Preston asked me once if I'd forgiven my mother. I don't know, I told her honestly. How do you forgive someone for 58 years of emotional neglect? How do you forgive someone for letting you believe you were worthless? Maybe you don't, Karen said gently. Maybe forgiveness isn't the goal. Maybe the goal is just to move forward. She's right, but moving forward is harder than it sounds when you've spent your whole life walking in circles, trying to understand why you were never enough. Emma has been wonderful through all of this. Luke too. They've rallied around me in ways my siblings never did. Aunt Rebecca sent me a Facebook message. Emma told me last month. She wanted to know if I was okay with everything. Now that I know you're not technically her niece, what did you tell her? I told her that you're my mother. And I love you. And genetics don't change that. And then I blocked her. I've never been more proud of my daughter. Tom suggested we take a trip this summer. Somewhere you've never been. Somewhere with no memories attached. Let's make new ones. So we're planning a trip to Italy. Just the two of us. 2 weeks of exploring ancient cities. And eating good food. And being far away from all the family drama. I'm looking forward to it. To being somewhere where no one knows my story. Where I'm just Jen, not the unloved daughter, or the secret half-sister, or the woman whose whole life was based on a lie, just Jenny. Last month, I did something I never thought I'd do. I reached out to Michael Preston's widow, my biological father's wife, the woman who'd been married to him for 45 years, never knowing he'd had a daughter with another woman. I didn't know if it was cruel or kind to tell her, but Laura, Karen and David all thought she should know. They said it was her choice whether to acknowledge it, but she deserved the truth. So I wrote her a letter, explained everything, offered to meet if she wanted, or to simply leave her alone, if she preferred. She called me 2 weeks later. Her name is Patricia. She's 85 years old, her voice strong despite her age. I suspected, she said, which shocked me. Not about you specifically, but I knew something had happened back then. Michael was different for a few months, guilty, distant. Then it passed, and we moved on. I chose not to ask questions I didn't want answers to. I'm sorry, I said. I'm sorry this happened. You're apologizing for being born, she laughed, not unkindly. Don't do that. None of this is your fault. Would you like to come to tea? I'd like to meet you. Michael would have wanted me to, so I went to her beautiful house in the West End of Portland. She served tea in delicate china cups and showed me photo albums of Michael through the years. You have his nose, she said, studying my face, and his stubbornness. I bet he never let go of anything once he set his mind to it. I wish I could have known him. So do I. He was a good man who made one terrible mistake, but that mistake brought you into the world. And you seem like a lovely person, so maybe some good came from it after all. We've had tea 3 times now. She's introduced me to extended family members, Michael's siblings and their children, more family I never knew I had. They've welcomed me, all of them, no questions about inheritance, or legitimacy, or whether I deserve to be part of their family tree. They just accepted me. Which makes what happened with Daniel and Rebecca hurt even more. 6 months ago, Daniel sent me a formal legal letter. He and Rebecca wanted to buy me out of my share of our childhood home. They didn't want to sell it to a stranger, they said, but they didn't want to share ownership with me anymore. The letter was cold, in person, like I was a stranger, not the sister who'd grown up with them. I agreed to sell them my share, not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't bear the thought of being tied to them through property, through lawyers, through ongoing negotiations. Tom was furious. They're trying to erase you, to write you out of the family entirely. Let them, I said. I don't need them. I don't need that house, or those memories, or anything that ties me to people who see me as less than. Because of genetics I had no control over. The sale went through last month. I took my third of the proceeds and donated it to a charity that helps children in foster care. Children who, like me, had grown up feeling unwanted and unloved. If my childhood had to mean something, let it mean that some other child gets the help and support I never had. Rebecca called me after she found out about the donation. She was angry. That was family money. You had no right to just give it away. It was my money, I said calmly. My share. I can do whatever I want with it, and I chose to help children who need it. You're doing this to hurt us, to make some kind of statement. Not everything is about you, Rebecca. This is about me making peace with my past. If that bothers you, that's your problem, not mine. She hung up on me. We haven't spoken since. Sometimes I miss them. Daniel and Rebecca, or rather I miss the idea of them. The siblings I thought I had, the family I thought we were, but the real Daniel and Rebecca, the ones who could discard me so easily, because of a secret that wasn't mine to keep. I don't miss them at all. Last week was my 60th birthday, 2 years and 3 months since my mother's deathbed confession. Tom threw me a surprise party. Emma and Luke were there. Patricia Preston was there. Karen and Laura came. David video called from Seattle. Friends from work, from my book club, from the various activities I've thrown myself into over the past 2 years. The house was full of people who loved me, who chose to be there, who saw value in me, not because of whose blood ran in my veins, but because of who I am as a person. No one from the Harris side of the family came. I didn't invite them, and they didn't reach out. And you know what? It was the best birthday I've ever had. As I blew out the candles on my cake, surrounded by people who actually cared about me, I realized something. My mother spent 58 years making me feel like I wasn't enough, like I was fundamentally flawed, like I was unworthy of love. But she was wrong. I am enough. I always was. The flaw wasn't in me. It was in her inability to see past her own guilt and shame, in her choice to punish an innocent child for a mistake she made. I wasted so much of my life trying to earn love from someone who was never going to give it, trying to be good enough for a woman who couldn't love me, because loving me would mean confronting her own failures. I'm done with that. Done trying to prove my worth to people who refuse to see it. These days I'm building a life that feels authentic, real, mine. I've taken up painting. I'm terrible at it, but it makes me happy. I've joined a hiking group and discovered I love being outdoors. I've started volunteering at that foster care charity, mentoring teenagers who, like me, grew up feeling unloved. I tell them what I wish someone had told me. It's not your fault. The adults in your life failed you, but that doesn't mean you're broken. That doesn't mean you're unlovable. That just means they weren't capable of loving you the way you deserved. Some of them believe me, some don't. But I keep saying it anyway, because it's true. And slowly, over these 2 years, I'm starting to believe it about myself too. My therapist says I've made tremendous progress, that I've done the work of processing decades of trauma in a remarkably short time. You're resilient, Dr. Williams tells me. You survived a childhood that would have broken many people, and now you're not just surviving. You're thriving. I don't know about thriving, but I'm really living. For maybe the first time in my life. Last month I wrote a letter, not to send to anyone, just for myself. A letter to the mother who never loved me. Dear Mom, I forgive you, not because you deserve forgiveness, not because what you did was okay. It wasn't, but because carrying this anger, this hurt, this sense of betrayal, it's too heavy. It's been crushing me for 60 years, and I'm tired of carrying it. You made a mistake. You had an affair. You got pregnant, and instead of being honest, you lied for your entire marriage. For my entire childhood, you lived a lie, and you made me pay for it. That wasn't fair. It wasn't right, and it damaged me in ways I'm still discovering. But I'm choosing to put it down now, to let go of the hurt, not for you, but for me, because I deserve to be free of it. I deserve to live without the weight of your guilt on my shoulders. I spent 58 years thinking I wasn't enough, that there was something wrong with me, that I was fundamentally unlovable. I know now that wasn't true. The problem was never me. It was you, and I'm choosing not to let your failure define me anymore. I'm choosing to believe that I am worthy of love, that I am enough, that I always was. So I forgive you, not because you asked for it, but because I need to be free. Goodbye, Mom. Jenny. I burned the letter in our fireplace, watched the pages curl and blacken and turn to ash, watched 60 years of pain go up in smoke. It didn't magically fix everything. I still have bad days, days when the old wounds ache, Days when I see a mother and daughter laughing together in a store, and feel that old familiar pang of loss for the relationship I never had. But those days are getting fewer, and the good days are getting better. Tom tells me I smile more now, that I seem like I've put down a burden I've been carrying for so long, I'd forgotten what it felt like to stand up straight. He's right, I have put it down. The burden of trying to be good enough for people who could never see my worth. The burden of a secret that was never mine to carry. The burden of believing I was fundamentally flawed. I've put it all down, and I'm walking away. My name is Jennifer Preston. I'm 60 years old. For 58 of those years I was unloved by my mother. I spent my childhood wondering what was wrong with me. I spent my adult life trying to fix something that was never broken. Then my mother died and told me her secret, and everything I thought I knew about myself shattered. It's taken me 2 years to pick up the pieces, to rebuild myself into someone new, someone who knows her worth, someone who doesn't need approval from people who can't give it. I'm not the person I was 2 years ago. I'm not even the person I was last year. I'm still figuring out who I am, who I want to be, but I know this much. I am worthy of love. I am enough. I always was. The little girl who won the art competition and desperately wanted her mother's approval. She's still in here somewhere, but now she knows that her mother's inability to give approval was never about. It was about guilt and shame and secrets that had nothing to do with a 7-year-old girl who just wanted to be loved. I wish I could go back and tell her that she's perfect, exactly as she is, that she doesn't need to try so hard, that the problem isn't with her. But I can't go back. None of us can. All I can do is move forward, and that's what I'm doing. One step at a time, one day at a time, building a life that's mine, surrounded by people who choose to love me, not because of whose blood runs in my veins, not because of biology or family trees or genetic tests, but because of who I am. And that, finally, is enough.